Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Power Hungry Podcast. I'm Robert Bryce. On this podcast, we talk about energy, power, innovation, and politics. And I'm pleased to welcome Toby Rice. He is the CEO of EQT Corporation to the podcast. Toby, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, happy to be here. Thanks.
So I warned you, guests on this podcast introduce themselves. So you have a number of titles, a number of businesses you're in, but if you don't mind, imagine you've arrived somewhere, you have a minute or so to introduce yourself. Please go ahead.
Yeah. So my name is Toby Rice. I'm currently the president and CEO of EQT. My background, real quick, I got started in the oil and gas industry back in 2007. Started a company with my brothers called Rice Energy. And our higher purpose back then was to help make America energy independent. And that was seemingly impossible from a lot of people. Fast forward 10 years later, we grew our company, Rice Energy, to a top 10 producer of natural gas in the country. Very, very grateful for that success. And in 2017, we combined our companies with EQT. And the combination of Rice Energy and EQT is what created America's largest natural gas producer. And I stepped back for a year and sort of retired and looked at what I was going to do next in life, and realized I wanted to make an impact. And fortunately, it wasn't being driven by the money. But when you look at how to make an impact in this world, there's a lot of ways you can do it. But one thing that was striking to me was the correlation between energy and quality of life. Simply put, the more energy you can give people, the better the quality of life. And so if you want to make an impact, provide the world with cheap, clean, reliable energy. And that's a way you can make an impact. And so I had an opportunity to join back EQT. The shareholders asked me to come back and get involved. And in July of 2019, I rejoined the company as the president and CEO, and have been working on, which is a great platform for us to do what we do, which is put more energy into this world. Unfortunately, we've been hitting some roadblocks, and because of people's concerns over climate, pipelines have been canceled, challenged, or opposed. Over 7 BCF a day of pipelines. It's about 10% of production in the U.S. essentially has been challenged, and that's prevented us from putting more energy into the world. And so, what we've been doing is educating the world on some real opportunities that the natural gas industry can play in meeting people's climate ambitions while also continuing to make an impact in the world by delivering cheap, reliable, clean energy on a world stage.
Gotcha. So tell me about EQT then. That's a good place to start. I want to talk about your various letters and things that you've written to the policymakers, but you said EQT is now the biggest gas producer in the U.S. So how much are you producing, and is it all in the Marcellus?
Yeah, so EQT is an operator. We have all of our operations in Appalachia. We currently produce about 6 BCF a day of natural gas gross. That's a little bit over 5% of the total U.S. gas supply. We've got a very large acreage footprint, over 1.5 million acres, and that is going to allow us to continue we have a tremendous inventory that's going to allow us to continue to produce this gas and sustain these volumes for decades. And we have a tremendous potential to do even more because of that. We send our gas to all parts of the country, including a BCF a day of natural gas that's going to the Gulf Coast, which will help support some of the LNG projects that are going on down there. But I'll tell you right now, Robert, I mean, one of the, we're sort of in a holding pattern like a lot of other operators across this country. People are running in maintenance modes, just keeping production flat, which is a sustainable operating model because we cannot outpace demand. And that demand has been choked off by having these pipelines cut off. So the one thing that people need to understand is this industry, and EQT included, can do a whole heck of a lot more. All we need is more pipelines and LNG facilities to make this happen. And this is really a big focus of mine for this company, is to help bring these things so that the U.S. oil and gas producer can do a lot more.
I want to hit on it, just follow up on what you said about 1 BCF a day of gas flowing from the Northeast to the Southwest, which is, I mean, this is truly a remarkable turnaround because since World War II, right, the little inch, big inch pipelines carried hydrocarbons from the Gulf Coast to the Northeast, but because of the Marcellus, it's going the other way, which is truly remarkable. Rick Smead called Marcellus, what did he call it, Prudhoe Bay under Pittsburgh. But this is put the Marcellus into some kind of perspective, if you don't mind, because 6 BCF is an enormous amount. So how much is being produced out of the Marcellus now?
So the Marcellus actually produces about a third of U.S. gas production. It's about 35 BCF a day. U.S. gas supply is about 95 BCF a day. To put this in context, EQT, if we were a country, we'd be the 12th largest producing country in the world. That's just one company in Appalachia. Right. Now, the Marcellus as a whole, or Appalachia as a whole, has more gas reserves than Russia. So it's an absolute powerhouse and tremendous energy potential here. And this is, people say this is like the Saudi Arabia of energy. It's absolutely true. I mean, the resource potential here is absolutely tremendous. But unfortunately, if we can't get these pipelines, Robert, this resource, the biggest gas field in the world, the Marcellus Shale, might as well be in Russia. Because
so let me interrupt you there, because you said, but clarify resource versus reserves, right? Because there's a critical difference there. Can you walk through that just very quickly? Because there's enormous amounts of resource in the world, right? But not all of it's accessible. So how much is considered resource, which is what's there that could be in theory developed, versus what's considered reserves? Can you walk through that real quickly?
Right. So resource is what is the potential that could be could be recovered, and in that you obviously have to make an assumption on what price of gas that you have to work with to make sure the projects are economic.
Right.
So that is a big pie. That's over 1.7 quads of natural gas. The reserves is more of a technical term that's used by the SEC, and that's there's some limits on the reserves. There is what can you actually develop with the price deck that you're seeing today, with a 5-year horizon, and also making sure that there's high confidence that the wells you drill are going to actually produce the gas that you say it's going to do. So
right,
you're limited to only claiming reserves for wells for opportunities that are close to existing producing wells. But the good thing about shale right now is it's a blanket reservoir. There's been a lot of penetrations through this shale. Industry has a very high degree of confidence that the source that we're claiming is going to actually translate to reserve. So when people want to understand what the true potential of the Marcellus could be, it's more appropriate to look at the resource potential. And Robert, with a $3.75 gas price, and currently spot gas prices are significantly higher than that. The Marcellus Shale has the opportunity to increase natural gas production an incremental 35 BCF a day, and be able to do that over a 10-year period of time and hold those volumes flat for over 30 years. So just
to be clear, so you're saying you could double, Marcellus could double output if you had sufficient pipeline capacity.
That's exactly what I'm saying. The biggest gas field in the world can be the biggest gas in the field in the world 2 times over. And the only thing that needs to make that happen is pipelines. And then also the LNG facilities to create the demand for that incremental volumes.
So you told me, we ran into each other here in Austin. We were both attending an event, and you said something I'd never heard before. And I knew the region was constrained, but you said EQT is obviously the biggest player, but other big players in the Marcellus are Range Resources and Antero. You said, as I recall, that none of you are adding more rigs because you can't move more gas, because what was it, 95% of the pipeline capacity you have is already spoken for?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And this is what really is disappointing for me, is to know that natural gas prices in the country, Robert, are over $8.60 for next month, and they're about over $8 for the average of this year. And then they're going to be $6 in averaging for calendar year 2023. We can do a lot more to bring supply to the market to help bring down these prices, but without pipelines, we cannot do that. We sell our gas at a discount here in Appalachia. And here's a really remarkable fact.
And the discount, I'm sorry to interrupt, but the discount, that's based on a different node pricing, right? Or a different hub pricing. You're selling at a discount to, say, Henry Hub in Louisiana. Can you just briefly explain what you mean there?
Yeah. So the gas price that I talk about, when people talk about natural gas prices, they're referring to Henry Hub. That's sort of the benchmark. Then the price you actually receive is regionally dependent. And the discount that you get is called basis. And in Appalachia, basis which is the discount, is typically anywhere from, historically, we used to get a premium for our gas because it was very close to the demand centers of the Northeast. And there wasn't a lot of supply. Well, now there's a ton of supply. And we're actually selling our gas at a discount to Henry Hub to the tune of negative, 75 cents to negative $1. And here's what's remarkable, Robert. If you look out on the futures just to this winter, natural gas prices in New England, natural gas prices in New England are set to be over $27 per MCF. And during that same period of time, we're going to be selling our gas here in Appalachia for a price of $7. How can you have that type of discrepancy? It's very clearly illustrates lack of pipelines causing unnecessarily high prices around the country. And New England, unfortunately, has been the biggest proponent of blocking pipeline infrastructure. And this is why we say these prices that people are paying are completely unnecessary. And with more pipeline infrastructure, we can alleviate these prices and really help Americans and bring the energy security that they drastically deserve.
I'm recalling from the letter, you've written several letters that have gotten a lot of attention, and you were profiled in the Wall Street Journal in April about some of the correspondence. But as I recall, just off the top of my head, in one of the letters you said an attack on the oil and gas industry is actually an attack on our customers. But it seems to, I'm paraphrasing what you're saying here, but I mean, you're making that point here about because the industry isn't able to move its gas, customers in New England are paying higher prices, but drastically higher prices because of this lack of ability to move the molecules. Am I reading what you're saying right here?
That's 100% correct. I mean, if people think that they can attack oil and gas and it's only going to be felt by the oil and gas producer, wrong. You attack a company, you're attacking that company's customers. And you attack our pipelines, you prevent our ability to invest, to reinvest and drill and bring more supply to the world. That's going to translate to higher prices, like exactly what is going on in the country and what is really going to be happening in New England this winter. And, I think people need to understand when people call us, trying to make an argument that there's price gouging going on. There's no price gouging. There was no price gouging. If people were able to set the price, oil wouldn't have gone negative a year and a half ago during COVID. We wouldn't have had prices be so low that hundreds of energy companies went bankrupt over the last couple of years.
Right.
So clearly price gouging is not the argument. It's all about supply and demand. And, what's really frustrating when you hear about a lot of these policies that have come out, it's all about attacking the oil and gas producer. And all this is doing is creating a more challenging investment environment for us to look into. And these wells that we're looking at drilling, these are 20, 30 year investments. We want to make sure that we're investing into an environment where our product is going to be recognized as being absolutely critical. And, by the way, over 80% of the world energy comes from hydrocarbons. That's not going to change anytime soon. So, we should have that environment to do that. But without that, we're not able to reinvest. And just to put this in just to talk about the lack of investment in this country, in 2014, let's just look at the total dollars this industry spends. In 2014, around the world, people spent about $750 billion investing in new wells. In 2021, that number was $350 billion. So it's been cut in half. Now, in the United States specifically, and this is the one that's really concerning, investment in 2014 was about $350 billion. And today, it's a little bit over $130 billion. So investments in the U.S. have declined almost 60%, 70%. And so we need to recognize, so like when people look at energy prices, like clearly the world needs more supply and America needs more supply. And we would like to see more political signals and policies in place that would help allow this to happen, allow us to bring more supply into the market, but do it sustainably. And that's an incredibly important thing, is that we're making sure that the demand is there before we add the supply.
Well, as you're saying that, Toby, I've heard, I guess I've heard those numbers before, but hearing you repeat them, I mean, if you're right and we're seeing this dramatic underinvestment and yet demand has not changed. I mean, you know, we've seen that because of driving, the number of miles people are driving. It would seem it's very bullish on potentially on price. But you see that in your own stock price. I was looking at it this morning. The beginning of last year, or beginning of 2020, shares were selling for about $6. They're now at $48. I mean, this is good for you because you're a big shareholder. But I mean, you're surprised about how the value of your own company has been, you know, was hit so hard and now rebounded so quickly. I mean, how do you think about this, given your own position in the company, and you're obviously an investor, you've been in this a long time? Are you surprised by the turnaround that has just happened in the last 24 months?
No, not surprised, but I'll tell you, Robert, I'm not smiling about it, because I'll tell you why. Prices, our stock is up like other energy company stocks are up because energy prices are high, and they're unnecessarily high. And this is hurting a lot of American families. They're struggling to pay their bills. And let's not forget about the 3 billion people around the world that have less electricity than runs a fridge. That's your stat. So like we're not successful as energy producers right now. Now, there's a lot of external factors.
You're not successful because you're not delivering it at a price that is agreeable to the consumer. Is that what you're saying?
Well, because we're not meeting our potential. I mean, we can do so much more. And
I got you.
You know, I'll tell you, you know, historically, I mean, this industry has been incredibly volatile. And when pipeline infrastructure gets blocked and when policies getting put in place that restrict supply, prices are going to go up, and you're going to see, you know, energy companies become more profitable. But, you know, that's not the world I want to live in. I want to live in a world where we're able to meet demand and provide the cheapest, most reliable, cleanest form of energy. Clearly, the world is energy short. Clearly, we have a tremendous resource under our feet where we can do more. And I would trade the extreme volatilities, the price swings, for a less volatile world where we can have we can have more sustainable prices and have the ability to grow sustainably. That's the world I want to be in, because only in that world we can provide cheaper energy costs to our customers, bring energy security here to America, and be able to bring our energy to the world stage to help lift the world out of energy poverty.
So now if I was, I'll just, for the sake of argument, I'd say, okay, well, these are all good points, but here's Toby Rice just talking his book, you know, and I say that, you know, just how would you respond to that? If I put that to you, oh, you're talking your book, right? You're going to make more money. You're going to, you know, EQT shareholders. I'm countering that by saying what you think is your purpose, but does that have any credence? Have you heard that charge before to you? Well, he's just talking his book.
Yeah, I mean that's certainly one of the biases that people put on us, and I think because of this, I think a lot of people in industry have maybe not spoken up as much. But the reality is, this industry and EQT specifically, we have a higher purpose, and that's really how we're going to measure our successes. Are we helping to provide energy security to the world? Are we helping in arresting climate change? And are we doing that profitably? So that if it's profitable, it's absolutely critical, because only a profitable business can be sustainable.
Right.
And so we are not going to apologize for our profits, because that's absolutely critical for us. But when we look at what we're doing, I mean, as America's largest natural gas producer, that's great. But I look around the world and you see that there's a clear need for more energy into this world, and we need to do more. And so what we've done is we've stepped back and we've looked at, you know, the biggest cause of this, the things that are driving the most opposition against what we do is people's concerns over climate. Right, wrong, and different, people are scared. And so we needed to take a step back and say, well, what is the issue? What can we do as industry to provide a solution? And we look around the world and say, okay, emissions, where are the biggest emissions in the world? And very simple, it's foreign coal. is the biggest source of emissions on the planet. Almost 50% of emissions in the world come from foreign coal. Well, what can we do to fix that? Well, we can use natural gas here in the United States and send that abroad to replace foreign coal. It's exactly what the leader in driving emissions over the last 15 years has done. That leader is the United States. And we've dropped emissions faster than any other country in the world. We've lowered our emissions almost 1 billion tons. And how did we do that? We did that. Over 60% of those benefits came from replacing coal with natural gas. Now we have the opportunity to do this on a world stage. And this is why we are campaigning to unleash US LNG, which is going to be the biggest green initiative on the planet. And we have the capacity and potential to increase LNG exports by over 50 BCF a day, incremental to what we're doing today. That is a fourfold increase to what we're doing today. That would bring about an incremental 50% extra energy above ground flowing through the pipelines of America. So you bring massive energy security. And the only thing we need to make that happen, Robert, is more pipelines and more LNG facilities. So, this is the idea that we.
Yeah, well, let me ask you about that, because it were two things. One, I want to ask you about the leadership issue, and then go back to the pipelines, because it's clear the anti-pipeline activists have been very successful, right, throughout, particularly in the Northeast. But I've watched the industry for a long time. I've written about it for a long time, and in looking at the landscape, and I'm not blowing smoke up your dress here, but that you've emerged kind of as one of the highest profile advocates for the oil and gas industry, really since, I would argue, the death of Boone Pickens, right? I mean, Pickens was, in his era, was the one kind of go-to guy, and I'd say maybe Harold Hamm with Continental Resources. But here's the question: why have so few of the top executives in oil and gas been willing to stand up and be more assertive in the way that you are, where they're the way Harold Hamm or Boone Pickens was? Why have they been cowed, I guess, would be the other way to put the question.
I'll tell you, one of the things that gives me the confidence to stand up and speak up is we've got a great solution. And we looked at this through the lens of why should we produce more natural gas here in the United States. This is the first time industry has put in an environmental centric argument for why natural gas needs to be there. So we've got something really great to talk about, and that's exactly what we're doing. And we've got a lot of amazing leaders in this industry. And let me tell you something, Robert. I mean, this is the most concerning thing that I have. Is in the debate that's going on about ending fossil fuels, is the fact that I think if that happens, the world is taking the best player off of the field when it comes to solving this energy transition. Because let me tell you something, this is really important for people to understand. We are in like two races right now. The first race is decarbonize the world. I think unleashing US LNG is going to be the initiative that allows us to do that. And I'd love to talk a little bit more about that. But the other race that we're in is, we're in a race to provide the first person that can create cheap, reliable, zero carbon energy. And I don't care if you're in renewables or if you're in nuclear or if you're in biodiesel, oil and gas. If you're in energy, you're in this race. And I look at this industry and our leaders and our workforce that we have here. We are the only industry that has gone through an energy transition before, and it was in a response to a crisis. Let's not forget 20 years ago when the crisis was peak oil. We're running out of energy. What are we going to do? That was a pending economic collapse that was facing us, and people were just as scared about that as they were climate change. What did this industry do? We transitioned from developing conventional reservoirs to unconventional reservoirs. And the leadership, the technology, the innovation, the risk-taking, the application, the scaling of that, to do that, hydraulic fracturing, horizontal drilling, we were able to figure out how to bring commercial volumes of oil and gas from a rock that has less permeability than pavement. We were able to crack the code on shale. And what happened as a response? United States went from we're running out of energy to becoming the leading energy producer in the world. We are an energy powerhouse. these leaders, this happened. The world needs to know this did not happen 50 years ago. This happened recently. And the same leaders, the same brains, the same workforce is still here in industry today. And we have the capabilities to do amazing energy transition movements. And now we've made energy cheap. We've made it reliable. Now we've got this industry focused on how we're going to make our energy cleaner and ultimately how we're going to make it a lower carbon, zero carbon solution. I'm betting on this industry and these great people here that are going to be able to figure it out because of our track record and our abilities to carry the modern world. And what's really exciting about when you think about unleashing US LNG in the world stage, natural gas can be transformed into a zero carbon solution, whether that's pre-combustion by transforming it into blue hydrogen or blue ammonia, or post-combustion with carbon capture and storing CO2 underground. Guess who's got those skill sets? We do. Right. So I'm very confident that we're going to win this race because we've got such great leaders and people in this industry that can make it happen.
Well, you mentioned something about the U.S. and it's something that just pops in, a question that pops in my head. So why isn't shale taken off in other countries? My line is, well, we have the rigs, the rednecks, and the rights. And maybe it's with the rigs, rednecks, rights, and the rocks, right? But that we have the best geology. Why haven't other countries been able to replicate the shale revolution?
I think it's rigs and roughnecks and the rocks. I mean, we
have all those and the rights and the rights to drill, right? The mineral rights. That's the other key part of it.
But I mean, listen, the geology on these shales is not impressive. It'd be foolish to think that this type of potential didn't exist other parts of the world. But what is incredibly hard to replicate is the entrepreneurialism and the wildcat spirit that took place, that was absolutely required to unlock shales. I mean, shale is not a drill a well in the ground and have a massive discovery. Right. Shale was created through decades of failure. And the only way you can crack the code on these shales is to add up all those failures, take those best practices and finally create something that actually makes sense. That's exactly what happened. So one thing that's special about the US is we had thousands of companies risking their dollars trying to crack the code and everybody was learning. You compare that to doing that in a foreign country where you've got maybe one national oil company, or maybe they bring in a major. So they've got 2 or 3 companies trying to figure this out. You don't have enough failure. You're not going to be able to get to the success that you need. But listen,
I like that idea. There's not enough failure to succeed. Let me interrupt because you were talking about the shale itself and you mentioned the Marcellus. You said it's a blanket reservoir. I haven't heard that term before. What does that mean?
That just means it's a geologic deposit that is laid down over, that's very extensive, and it will cover entire states, regions.
Oh, I see. So that strata covers a big territory. I got you. Okay, it's homogeneous across a big area, or not necessarily exactly homogeneous, but the extent of it. I got you. Okay. Yeah. So let me ask you about the critics, the people who stop pipelines, because I can think off the top of my head. You got the Mountain Valley. You have Northeast Supply Expansion Project. I mean, those are just 2 off the top of my head. Why have the pipeline opponents, and New York State has been one of the most obvious examples of using the Clean Water Act to block pipelines? Why have the pipeline opponents been so successful?
They're very sophisticated, Robert, and I think we are living in a world where cancel culture more and more is taking grip, and when people fail to see the full picture of the actions that they're taking, that's how we get ourselves in a situation. I mean, look at MVP, for example. This is a pipeline project that's going to produce 2 BCF a day of natural gas to the southeastern part of the United States. Pipeline protesters look and say,
Mountain Valley Pipeline, is this what use the initials there? Okay, I just want to
Mountain Valley Pipeline. Yeah.
Okay.
So this is a 300-mile pipeline that's going to go from northern West Virginia into Virginia, and pipeline protesters can look and say, well, fossil fuels are bad. We need to shut this down. So let's shut down these pipelines. Well, let's look at the other side of the coin. That pipeline that was going to bring that natural gas to that part of the country would be able to replace and allow that portion of the country to replace and retire coal-fired power generation. And every BCF a day of natural gas that we can put into the world to replace coal will have the environmental impact of saving over 30 million tons of emissions. Okay, that's the math. And so,
repeat that number if you don't mind. Say that again. I would just want to drive that.
One BCF a day of natural gas replacing coal will translate to a carbon emission savings of over 30 million tons. That is the equivalent of electrifying over 6 million vehicles. It's absolutely massive. And so when you look at this pipeline, people look at this and you can look at it one way and say, oh, this is creating emissions. Or you could look at it the other lens and say, this pipeline has the capacity to eliminate over 60 million tons of emissions. Now, to put that number in perspective, Robert, the entire carbon capture industry right now, how much carbon we capture and inject underground is about 50 million tons. So this pipeline itself, if it was all replacing coal, which it's not all going to, would be a tremendous environmental benefit, but you have to look at the full picture of what's going on. And and forget about energy security to the residents of this part of the country. I mean, another thing you look at is this is industry, and we are putting these pipelines in place, and there are going to be some members of landowners that are going to be impacted. But it pales in comparison to the number of Americans that are going to be benefited. MVP pipeline is going to service over 7 million homes. And so surely the number of impacts we have here, big picture, these pipelines are clearly a good bet, and definitely, definitely things that we should do. And this is where leadership needs to come in, because listen, nothing we do is going to be without consequences, without risk, but strong leaders need to evaluate the fact that this is going to be better. It's better than it is going to be worse, and then make that decision. And I think that's another thing that has been a challenge with cancel cultures. It's very hard to, there's nothing out there that comes without risks or without impacts, but we just need to, it's even more important for us to understand the benefits. And then when you think about so what people are missing, and here's the crazy thing. This is a really stat that really people really are floored when they hear this. One of the biggest misconceptions when it comes to climate is the fact that what we do here in the United States is what matters. The reality is, as we've reduced our emissions by over 1 billion tons in the last 15 years, the rest of the world has increased their emissions over 4 billion tons. Okay. That wipes out everything we've done in the last 4 times over. So I'll give you one example. Like the people that are going to oppose unleash US LNG, which, by the way, is massively, we've getting an amazing reaction. I'd love to talk about that. But, and I haven't met these people yet, but eventually we're going to meet somebody that says, hey, I oppose more natural gas. Said, because these people ultimately, they will only want to support zero carbon solutions like solar and wind. But what people need to understand is they don't understand how much energy demand there is in this world. And when solar and wind cannot meet that energy demand, people are going to use coal. Right. And in the last 12 months, coal use around the world has soared and increased emissions over 500 million tons. That's just in 12 months. Now, to put that in perspective, that is the equivalent, that essentially wipes out every single solar and wind turbine we've installed here in the United States in the last 15 years. Said plainly, 12 months of not addressing foreign coal has wiped out every benefit that every investment we've done in solar and wind here in the last 15 years in America. So foreign coal is a major.
Yeah, those are big numbers, and I'm well aware. I just published today a piece on Real Clear Energy that China and India alone by the end of next year will increase their coal production by 700 million tons. That's the coal production, which is greater than the all U.S. coal output. I mean, just those two countries, and that's just their incremental expansion. So the pipeline opponents, just to be clear, you're saying that their arguments against this are just around climate change, but you're saying, I mean, this is a point that Alex Epstein has made, and I know you're familiar with it, but they're not addressing the benefits. And where you're steering the conversation, and pretty effectively, I have to give you credit, is saying you're not looking at the whole picture here. You know, the opponents are not looking at the decarbonization effects. But let's move on a little bit, because I'm curious to learn a little bit more about EQT's business. I've been told by different people, different drillers, that there's a direct ratio between the amount of sand you can get into the frac job. If the more sand equals more output. And in reading up on your experience at EQT, that seems to be what your experience is. So is it axiomatic? The more sand you can get into the wellbore, and the more sand you can get into the frac, then the better your productivity. Is that true?
Yes, there's a direct correlation between the size of your frac and the production that you will receive. There also is a direct correlation between the size of your frac and the cost
Sure.
that your well cost.
Right.
So you need to make sure that the juice is worth the squeeze. And the industry is at a really good place where I think we've pushed we've pushed the frac sizes to really maximize the productivity of these wellbores. And now there's a very healthy amount of optimization that's taken place, so that we understand what is the optimum frac size given the costs to maximize the economics of that we're doing.
And what is that now? What are the length of your laterals, and how many stages, and how many pounds per foot, or pounds of sand per stage? Give me the metrics there, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so it's gonna be different in every shale formation, and even different regions in the shale. You'll have different things that work best. In Appalachia, our frac job is between 2,000 and 2,200 pounds per foot of wellbore. So if you have a
20, you're putting a ton of sand in every foot of wellbore.
Yeah. So if you have a 1,000 foot of wellbore, you're going to use a couple million pounds of sand. Yeah.
And how long are your laterals then? What is the length?
Our laterals? Yeah. Historically, when we started in industry, laterals. My first lateral I ever drilled in Appalachia was 2,000 feet. The next one I drilled, I thought I was knocking out of the park with a 4,000 foot lateral. That was big. Now every lateral we drill averages around 15,000 or a little over 12,500 feet. And the industry has the technical capabilities to drill laterals that are 20,000 feet in length. I mean, think about that. We have we can drill down 1.5 miles, bend that wellbore sideways, get horizontal, and go flat for over 4 miles. It's pretty insane. But a testament to the technical capabilities that this industry has. And that's really been one of the extending laterals, optimizing frac size have been the two main components in bringing profitability and ensuring the best optimizing the economics of the wellbores that we do. But there's still more things that we're doing. Here's an amazing thing, Robert, is when we do, these wells are absolutely massive. So for us, we have sites that we're producing right now that produce enough energy to power 400,000 homes. If you assume that, so I mean these things are super concentrated, super dense.
And now you're talking about the pad, a multi-well pad, or you're talking about just a single well?
No, we're talking about a pad.
Yeah. Okay. And the drilling pad. I'm going to interrupt because this is one of the other things I'm curious about. How many wells are you putting on a given pad? Then, how many wells are you drilling from one individual cleared space? How big are those pads generally?
It could be between 8 to 16 wells per pad. And we'll space those wells, say probably do one every 1,000 feet, and then. And so we'll make sure the wells stay about 1,000 foot away from each other, and then we'll run them as long as up to 20,000 horizontal feet if we have the leasehold. One of the new development styles that we've done here at EQT is instead of just going out and drilling one pad, drilling 5 or 6 wells at a time, we'll pair up 4 or 5 pads sequentially, and we'll drill 4 or 5 wells off one pad, move to the next site, which is maybe 1.5 miles over, and do that and drill those wells. So we'll go from drilling 4 or 5 wells at once off of one pad to drilling 20 to 25 wells off of multiple pads in sequence. We call that combo development, and it's been a step change in cost savings, largely driven by the operational efficiencies you get because our drilling guys, once they figure out, I mean, they're steering these well bores, and they need to. We're targeting a 6-foot target window. So I mean, think about the technologies. Like, not only are we out there, measure depths 25,000 feet away, We're steering this in accuracy of keeping it within 6 feet. So it's absolutely tremendous, the technology. But that is once you understand the lay of the land from a geology perspective, your guys can now really open up the drilling speeds. We've doubled the drilling speeds here at EQT.
To how many days then from spudding the well to getting the finishing the drilling?
Yeah, on the horizontal section, we can drill about 5,000 feet in a day, and we've had some days where we've hit over 2 miles in a day, so 10,000 feet in a day. So you do that to drill the horizontal section, you're talking anywhere from 3 to 4 days.
And so, are you running your own rigs? Do you do your own drilling, or do you contract your drilling?
So we contract pretty much all of our service equipment. And when you think about an operator, what we really are is glorified contractors. We set the blueprints, we set the plans, and then we organize the equipment.
Who does most of your drilling and completion?
So we have on the horizontal rigs, we use Patterson. Completion, we are using a few different frac companies. Evolution, US Well Services are out there for us right now. One of the key things that we're doing in the oil field service side of things is we are working. One of the major design features that we're pushing at EQT is to electrify the oil field, and that is getting off of diesel-based equipment to electric-powered equipment. That started with our electric frac fleets, and so US Well Services and Evolution have been pioneers in the electric frac technology. But you're seeing that have massive adoption. So, I mean, Robert, think about this. We're fracking our wells with jet engines right now. So we natural gas fired turbines to create the power to power the electric frac fleets that then we use to hydraulically fracture our wells. This technology came in the last few years, and now you're seeing radical adoption from the industry on this front. I mean, it's just another sign that this industry, just the ability to innovate and evolve in this industry is it's absolutely incredible. But the point is,
go ahead. Well, let me ask you about the electric frac, because that I understand some of this, but the gist of it is, okay, just to be clear, if people don't know the drilling business. So EQT hires Patterson, they drill the borehole, and then they hire another pressure pumper, was one of the frac crew that comes in and then completes the well and injects the water and the sand to allow the hydrocarbons to flow back up to the well. But that the key there in terms of the electrification of the pumps, what advantages does that have? Because you're injecting at very high pressure the salt the water and the sand. Why does the electrification of that pumping equipment, why is that an advantage?
There's a number of advantages in a very high level, Robert. I mean, there's over 450 different services and service providers that we need to coordinate just to get one well developed. So that's just to understand
450.
Yeah, and so
the sand for the sand with the rope, the soap, and the dope. What is the guys said? I know I've worked in logistics before, but you got you have a sand provider, you got a caterer. I'm assuming the people who provide the trailers for the man camps. All of these are in that 400. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
So obviously, the frac crew is probably the biggest service where we have the biggest amount of spend. The biggest benefits with electric frac fleets, there's a couple things. Number one is the hydraulic horsepower that these frac pumps provide. A diesel pump traditionally would provide about 2,000 horsepower. These electric frac pumps can provide 7,000 horsepower. And so, I mean, they're almost 2.5 times more powerful than your traditional. So it's a step change in power. It's amazing. Then you get the environmental benefits from burning natural gas versus oil. There's your evolution and using cleaner energy. For us at EQT, we have eliminated over 25 million gallons of diesel consumption just from the move of moving to these electric frac fleets. The other thing are the electric fracs, are you using grid power for that, or are you generating your own power to run the pumps? We're using natural gas to power this jet engine to make the electricity to power the frac pumps.
I see. So you're using this is the Well, a friend of mine, Chuck Spinney, talked about the Pentagon. He called it the self-licking ice cream cone. Or what was, there was a guy who wrote the book on coal. He was talking about the virtuous cycle in the coal business, that the coal is mining itself. So you're using natural gas to produce the power to drill for more natural gas.
Yeah, that's right.
You're creating. It's not a continuous, or what is the continuous motion machine, but you're creating a system where the system feeds on itself to produce more of the fuel that you're trying to produce.
Yeah. It's and then you look and you see, well, how much energy we created from this wellbore compared to the amount of energy that it took to create it. I mean, it's absolutely staggering.
Have you done that calculation? Because I've been looking at this
I
energy
need to do
return
it.
on energy invested. I've been looking at, there's a good report from Rosenberg and Adam. You probably saw that report that came out in February about the energy return on energy invested for different. But yeah, I'd be interested to see if you do those calculations. But I interrupted here again. Go ahead.
Yeah, somebody could do it at home. It's about 2,000 gallons to do a stage. A stage is about 200 feet. 200 feet of lateral is about using 2.5 BCF per 1,000 feet. Those are the basic numbers for the stats, for the gallons of diesel to the amount of energy that will create for that per percent of rock. But yeah, listen, I mean, this is why, I mean, here's a really amazing thing. I mean, this is why shale is taken off. This is why hydrocarbons power the world, because it is the most effective, efficient, cost-effective way that we can use to power the world. One of my biggest, one of the things that people should be scratching their heads, sitting home. I talk to a lot of people that are, in my generation that are concerned about climate. And one of their things is like, well, oil and gas industry is holding back solar and wind. I said, you think that's what's holding back solar and wind? You think we really care? Like we are telling you the world is energy short. We need all forms of energy in the world. When you really have a cheaper, more reliable, cleaner form of energy, and you can do it sustainably, which is the most important thing, which means it's got to be profitable,
right?
Then it explodes on the scene. I mean, just look at how fast when we cracked the code on shale, it absolutely exploded and took off, and there were no excuses about why shale wasn't taking over the grid mix. If we really do have that technology that's ready to work on a world stage, that's sustainable, it will take off, and the adoption will be, self-evident. Over 95% of the wells that we drill in the United States now are shale wells, because we're so efficient. The process is so efficient.
Do you have any dry wells? I mean, is that a thing of the past now?
The only dry wells you're going to have are going to be if you have operational issues where, maybe you get stuck when you're drilling.
Lose a drill bit or get something's happened. You break the pipe stem or something, and lose the thing lose the integrity of the well.
Yeah, and that failure rate is less than 1%.
So what are the biggest challenges then in the drilling? Because I travel around a fair amount and talk to people who are in manufacturing and other businesses, and I hear over and over labor shortages. In fact, in Pennsylvania, I was in Pennsylvania talking to a battery manufacturer. They were short 800 people. So in terms of your business right now, where are you facing supply? What are your biggest crimps or biggest challenges in terms of getting the job done? It's labor shortages? What about sand, tubular steel? Where are you facing the most friction in the logistics of your business?
Yeah, at a very high level, this industry, the biggest challenges we face are all above surface. We've done the exploration subsurface. We know what we need to do. We know the amount of resource we have to get. It's all surface related issues. Specifically operationally, yeah. I mean, labor is a big thing. I was in the field yesterday, and I just remarked thinking, I've never seen this many help wanted signs up. That's anecdotal, but it's not just this industry. It's every I think business owner in the country is struggling to find talent.
And on the labor side, is it that because I've talked with people in Texas, so this prospective employee may check all the boxes, but can they pass a drug test, or do they have a felony conviction, or is there one thing in terms of those labor issues that stands out, or it causes bigger friction than others?
No, it's actually just getting people. And here's the crazy thing, Robert, because this is what this industry offers now. My first job in this industry, I was a floor hand on a workover rig, which is like bottom of the totem pole. I was making $9 an hour with a $2 an hour safety pay.
Where was this?
This was in West Texas back in 2000, 2005, 2006.
In the Permian Basin.
Yeah, I broke out in West Texas. But here's what attracted me, and this still exists. You start, I mean, obviously starting wages now are probably double that, but there's such an awesome opportunity to start, without a college degree. You can start, and then your ultimate prize, if you learn and you work hard, you build your knowledge up, you can be a company man. And a company man in this industry, that's the ultimate prize, can make over $1,500 a day. And there's so many company men out there that started as that entry level job. And
just to be clear, so the company man is so EQT has Patterson or another contractor on the site. The company man is on site to watch the contractors. Is that, do I have this right? Is that that they're the supervisor, the company representative saying, hey, you guys are doing this right or doing this wrong, but that's the highest ranking person on the rig or on the well site. Is that what, do I have this right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. There are sort of general contractor on every site making number one job, making sure we're taking safety is being taken care of, protecting the environment, number two, and then making sure that the design is being followed, and then we're staying on budget, and any operational issues, he's problem solving, communicating back with the office to make sure we stay on track. So, I mean, it's to get labor. I mean, the oil field, hey, for listeners, the oil field is hiring right now, and it's an amazing opportunity if you want to come in through, without a college education, obviously, with college education, professional petroleum engineers, that's obviously another amazing career path, and all the other disciplines that we have. But yeah, there's, I mean, I was talking to one of our roughnecks the other day. Think about this. This is the opportunity that this person has. He's making $18 an hour base pay. He gets to work 87 hours a week. And for that 47 hours is time and a half overtime. So, I mean, this person is averaging over $30 an hour, can work 87 hours a week. I look at that and I'd be like, as an 18-year-old kid, I'd be like, this is amazing. I can make $2,500 a week. Like, sign me up. But some people look at that and say, oh man, you got to work 87 hours a week though. And so, like, getting people that actually want to work, like, there's a tremendous opportunity for people that want to join this industry. And I'd say we've got amazing training programs here, so that, even if you don't know, I mean, I was a kid from Boston and I was sweeping chimneys one week, and then the next week I was on a workover rig in West Texas, learning what the hell this thing was doing. So
I'm sure you didn't get any hazing by those Texas tool pushers out there. I'm sure they treated you with some guy. Yeah,
this was old school back then. They would never do this today, but I remember when we were tripping pipe, they used to, sometimes the drill bit would get stuck. So when you break the pipe apart, water would come out.
Yeah.
And because it's in a wellbore that's 15,000 feet deep, it's hot down there. So that water gets really hot. When they make the connection and they pull that pipe across, this guy would put his hand underneath the pipe, and as that water was coming out, he'd spray it at me. And it was like boiling hot water. He'd go, boiled lobster, because I was from Boston. So that was the funny thing for them to do. It's not funny now.
Not funny. Wouldn't be allowed. Hey, so what do you think about I've been reading up on you. Your dad worked at BlackRock, and from what I understand, that was he helped you get you and your brothers get started. What does he think of this ESG push now? Because BlackRock has been in the middle of that. I mean, have you talked about that with him? Because my joke on ESG is that what does it stand for? ESG, the E stands for emissions, and the S and G are silent, right? That this is all about carbon dioxide. Your dad's history at BlackRock, have you talked about this with him and how he views the ESG push?
Well, I think it certainly respects that this is a thing that people are going to consider when they're making investments. Now, is it? I think with ESG for me, I mean, my approach is, I think we need to take a balanced approach on the ES and G, and not just have it be all about the environment. But listen, at a very high level, what is ESG designed to do? It's designed to, the ultimate goal is to create companies that can be sustainable and generate profits over the long term. And when you think about it like that, we all embrace ESG because we all want to create businesses that are profitable, not just today, but for the long term. And, but I think like in anything in life, you need to take a balanced approach in everything you do. And once you start prioritizing one thing over the next, I think you're going to get unintended consequences, like what exactly happened in Europe. Europe is, I'd say, probably 5 years ahead of the United States as it comes to the ESG mentality. And they definitely prioritize the E. When looking at just energy, what did they do? They pulled out to prioritize the E over the S, which is social, which is call that the energy security.
Right.
They ripped out their coal and nuclear power generation and replaced it with solar and wind. They shut down their drilling in the North Sea. So their production in the North Sea went from 19 BCF a day down to 9 BCF a day. So their gas production was sawed in half. They stopped drilling, and then they banned hydraulic fracturing, which is a miracle technology. So they've completely prevented themselves from completely cut off their energy security. And now you find yourselves where they're at, which is they're dealing with, military conflict. And
right.
So we have to take a more balanced approach, and we cannot lose sight of what's going on over in Europe. Like, we're seeing those same impacts here. Robert, there's major energy security issues here in the United States. It's already here. It starts by, the first symptom is high prices. We have high energy prices right now. The next thing is inflation. We have massive inflation right now. It's going to get to a point where economies start shutting down. In Europe, they started shutting down fertilizer plants, was one of the first things to fall. Right. Guess what? That's going to translate to high food prices. So we see high prices, we see inflation. Are we going to see military conflict here in the US? Probably not. But guess what? The world is energy short. And if it stays energy short, you're going to see more energy conflict around the world. And guess what? That impacts the United States. What's going on in Ukraine right now impacts us. And so the United States needs to be a leader in ESG and providing energy security to the world, and doing something that's going to help arrest climate. And that is what unleashing US LNG is all about, is putting an incremental 50 BCF a day of energy into the world to not only give massive energy security to the United States, because that energy that we're exporting is a surplus for us here, and it's going to keep energy prices cheap, remove the volatility, but it's going to provide energy security to the world. And it's also going to replace over 50 BCF a day of coal, which is, it's going to be the environmental equivalent of electrifying every vehicle in the United States, putting solar panels in every home in the US, and also doubling US wind capacity. That's the equivalent of adding 54,000 industrial scale windmills combined. It's absolutely massive if we can unleash US LNG. That's why we call it the biggest green initiative on the planet. But like we mentioned, the energy security that this is going to bring. Think about this world where we've got 50% extra energy flowing through our pipelines. Guess what? When our leaders ask us for more production right now, because of the delay, it takes the cycle time for us to, say, okay, push the button, get the rigs, get the people, get everything. I go to them and say, I can get you your production in 18 months. But if we're in a situation where we have this energy on standby and surplus, when people ask us for more energy, we can say, I'll get you that energy in 18 hours. It'll be that fast. So and that's the energy security. It would be unprecedented energy security to Americans. And the last thing I'd say is,
go ahead. Yeah.
No, go ahead.
Well, I'm hearing you say this, and I get where you're going, but I'm also looking at the Biden administration and what they've done so far, and they're what seems to me just frankly kind of an anti-energy stance. Across the board. Except for wind and solar and for electric vehicles, which is what they talk about all the time. Here's the question. What's your take on the way the Biden administration has approached energy, whether it's the allowing or just ignoring or being silent on the closure of the Palisades nuclear plant in Michigan, the Indian Point nuclear plant in New York, or digging out the stopping Keystone XL? What's your brief take on how the Biden administration has approached energy in general?
I think energy transition, energy is a big subject, and It can be very complex. And as I mentioned, the things that we can do to improve the environment, if we're focusing just only in the United States, people don't understand that doesn't matter on a world stage, what we do here in the United States. It doesn't matter if the only thing that matters is shutting off foreign coal. People don't realize that. I mean, that's a major point. I mean, Robert, even me, like a couple of years ago, I had a guy that said, "Hey, Tobe, you know that we're using more coal around the world than we've ever used before." I said, "No way," because we've done a good job in evolving our energy sources to minimize the use of coal. And you say, surely that's happening around the world. It's not. And that is the one piece that just people don't understand. That stat I told you about, the 12 months of not addressing foreign coal, wiping out everything we've done the last 15 years. These are very easy points to make that just people don't think about. But here's the reality. The reality, and this is the other thing, I think the calendar this year in 22 is going to be a year where people need to recalibrate their approach towards energy, because right now we are in an energy shortage. We're in an energy price crisis right now. We've got massive inflation going on. And by the way, emissions are soaring. So we're not achieving anything. Nobody's achieving any goals with the current approach that's being taken place to date right now. So I hope that people recognize this and realize that, this industry has a solution. Unleashing US LNG is going to help the environment. It is going to help energy security here and lower prices. And on top of that, it's going to be the biggest jobs creator this country's ever seen. And we don't even talk about this, Robert, but this plan to do this, it's going to create over 300,000 high-paying jobs. There's over $30 billion of wages that this job would require to take. So whether you care about the environment, whether you care about energy security and low prices here, whether you care about energy security to our allies around the world, or whether you care about the economy here in the U.S., you should support Unleash US LNG. This administration hasn't heard this plan until recently. And so it's going to take people some time to really understand and vet the corners of this thing. But this is a reason why we've gotten such a positive reaction to date. But it's a complete 180 from people thinking, let's just shut down fossil fuels here in the United States, and that's going to be a good thing for the world. Actually, it's the opposite. We need to be doing more energy development here in the United States, because it's the only thing that's going to allow us to meet our climate objectives. And we get all these nice benefits like energy security and big job creation here in the U.S. But people aren't thinking like that, right?
Well, yes, but you make a convincing argument, and it's an interesting one. But yeah, I don't think that message is getting heard very much in this administration. Who do you admire in the energy business?
Man, there's a ton of people.
Give me two or three or four.
Well, so I think Boone was a big leader. I mean, obviously George Mitchell, master innovator.
Sure.
He was big. I mean, Aubrey McClendon, was a pretty big dreamer, and I think he was really a pioneer for a lot of great things. And there were some things that I think there's also some lessons you can learn from Aubrey.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people, but I will tell you this: what's really amazing is I don't think there's a group of people that people get less credit for how good they are, like the hearts that we have here. I mean, people look at the oil and gas industry as people that just care about profits. Like when I talk to these guys, when I talk to these other CEOs, like they care about energy security, they care about providing jobs, they care about the environment, and they care about the American consumer and making sure that we're delivering energy, as cheap as we can. There's a lot of heart in this industry that we don't get credit for, and it's very consistent across the board. These one of the reasons I think that has really shored up a lot of things is, we went through some really rough times in this industry over the last couple of years. Like I said, there was hundreds of companies that went bankrupt. Like that got rid of a lot of, bad actors. Maybe I haven't met many of these people, but these tough times have really, I'd say really purified a lot of the people that are here in this industry, and you're really dealing with some high class individuals that I'm really excited. And this is the exciting part is, compared this Unleash US LNG to sort of Pickens, wind plant and doing CNG using natural gas to do power transportation. The most exciting thing about this plant to Unleash US LNG is this is going to require everybody in industry to step up and do their part to meet this incremental 50 BCF a day of production. And it's going to require people around the world. So everybody in industry is going to play a key role, and we're going to need a lot of teamwork for people to step up and do their part and help us meet this massive objective, because this is the biggest green initiative on the planet. We're going to need, our leaders in Washington to help us set up these trade agreements with people overseas, because we need to shore up that demand before we can actually think about adding supply. And so this is going to actually take a total team effort. And I know that the quality of people that we have here, standing next to me on this thing are going to be great champions for this to help us launch this plan.
So just a couple of more things. We've been talking for about an hour, and my guest is Toby Rice. He's the CEO of EQT Corporation. You can find more about him and EQT at EQT.com. So you're 40 years old now, is that right? 40, and you got into Rice Energy with your brothers, Daniel and Derek. I gather that one of them is older and one is younger. The question is, so did you draw straws to determine who gets to be CEO? Because you were partners in this deal, and was an agreement that you were going to be CEO? Because I have brothers, and we love each other, but we're also trying to figure, well, who's going to be the leader here? How did you end up with the CEO job, and Daniel and Derek with other jobs?
Well, I got the CEO job because I was the first one to get in and the company, so I got to pick the CEO.
Oh, okay.
But listen, from 2007 to 2013, I had the CEO title, but I mean, as a private company, it doesn't really mean much. When we went public in 2014, Danny has a financial backing, and we made him the CEO at that point. During our time as a public company from 2014 to 2017, Danny was the CEO, and now back at EQT, I'm in that seat now. So, but the good news with us is we all have different disciplines. Danny finance, me petroleum engineering. Derek is a geologist. I'd say Derek probably caught the short straw because we needed a geologist, and he fortunately he likes storytelling, and geology is a lot of part about that. And then we've got Ryan Rice, who's the youngest brother. Not a lot of people know about, but this kid was really special in digitizing our business and bringing us next level analytics. And he was really we were always big data. When Ryan came in, we were like, we weren't as big data as we thought, because Ryan really took us to the next level. And Ryan is a petroleum engineer, and he's about 30 years old. So we're really grateful to have the skill sets that we have with the brothers. But I think the special thing about us is, we were grateful to be joined by, I think, people that were experts in their disciplines in this thing, and we've got a great team here at EQT, and couldn't be happier for the group we've got.
Well, congratulations. I mean, make a family business work, and that you can work with your brothers. That's got to be rewarding. So just a couple last questions here, Toby. What are you reading these days? I have a big stack of books. I'm always reading books in preparation for interviews and so on. And, I've written a few books myself, but what's on your reading list these days?
Right now I am reading Epstein's book, Fossil Future.
Right.
That's pretty powerful. I'm also reading another book called The Power of Purpose. I think that's the title of it. It's about higher purpose in an organization. So those are the two that are on the docket right now.
Okay. So last question is one I ask of all my guests. So what makes you optimistic? What gives you hope for the future?
I think that we have a tremendous opportunity. I think energy is everything, and a root cause of a lot of these issues that we have are due to lack of enough energy in this world. What gives me hope is the potential that the United States has with energy. What gives me hope is unleashing US LNG. I really think this is going to be a solution to a lot of issues, whether it's addressing people's concerns on climate, or finding a way to pull these 3 billion people out of energy poverty and give them a better quality of life. I've never been more excited or driven to make something happen as I am with unleashing US LNG. And that's saying something, because we've taken on some pretty big initiatives, like starting a company with not much starting an energy business with not much experience, when I first started, or doing the takeover of EQT. I mean, those were both very ambitious things, but I am more excited about the impact that unleashing US LNG in the world stage can have to make an impact in this world. So that's what gives me hope.
Good. Well, I think we'll stop there then. That's a good place to stop. My guest, Toby Rice, from CEO of EQT Corporation. Thanks a million for being on the Power Hungry podcast.
All right. Thanks, Robert.
And thanks to all of you in podcast land. Tune in for the next episode on this same podcast channel. Until then, see ya.